Talking with the experts.
If you want to know how to build a culture of trust in your business, Jussi Luukkonen has the answers in episode 292.
Well, asking more the what and how questions instead of why. Because when you ask, why did you do like that? There's inbuilt patronizing element. It's like blaming game starts from, why did you do that? It's like parenting. You ask your son, why did you do that? It's like, okay, I'm dumb. Yeah, I did it. But if you ask, what do you feel? What did you think when you were doing? What was happening? Gather those facts. What was going on? What did you think? What was your intention? How did you try to do it? Okay, there were some things that didn't go as planned or backfired, but how did those things happen and what was going on?
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. Now, I want to ask you a question. Compared with people at low trust companies and people at high trust companies, who do you trust the most? The ones that have the lower trust? Obviously not. And the ones that have higher trust, of course you would. However, my next guest, Jussi Luukkonen, is going to be teaching us how to build a culture of trust within organizations. Now, Jussi is a rare bird. He has excelled in creative industries, the education sector, and businesses as a leader, a trailblazer, and a strategist. Originally, Jussi trained as a theatre director in the Finnish broadcasting company's radio theatre in the early 80s. Those early years as professional theatre director have given him an ingenious edge that very few possess. Welcome, Jussi, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Rose, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Terrific. Now I understand your posh accent because you were in the theatre, and I didn't know that until just then.
Well, I didn't know that theater causes posh accents.
Of course it does.
Even though I love British theater, and when I was still living in Finland, I used to go quite often to London to see all the good musicals and other big theater events, but more importantly, the wide variety of fringe theaters that were just, a treasure trove of theater. So I love British theater, and well, Shakespeare's one of those my deep loves.
Of course you would. Now, you've working within a business that has high trust or low trust, there is a myriad of percentage of engagement within that organisation. How can we build better trust within organisations to build that engagement?
I think the easiest answer to that is to be more transparent and open. That's the only way forward. One of my heroes, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, he's talking a lot about radical transparency and radical openness. And I think those two things are required if you really want to build a culture of trust.
Now, what is this radical transparency that you speak of?
It means that leaders should not hide things from the people. I think that there is this misconcept that leaders somehow know more and understand more than the people they are supposed to lead. On the contrary, quite often the wisdom is with the people, and they know, sometimes even intuitively, the solutions, whereas if leaders are just relying their own experience and their own expertise, they narrow and become myopic. Whereas if they open the information for all, you will see those sprouts of good thinking and new ideas and innovation coming from that soil. But leaders need to be very courageous to do that. It is a scary thing to be open and honest and transparent, because it makes you vulnerable. And quite often in leadership context, people are afraid of showing their vulnerability and that they might not know all the answers. So radical transparency means that it's open, the information is open for all. And well, there are cases when it needs to be confidential, but even with the confidential information, you can be surprisingly transparent within the company setting.
Yeah, I agree. Many times on this podcast, we've had, I've spoken with other business leaders who have said there's a difference between managing a business and leading a business. And transparency is one of those great factors that a great leader needs to have, and also that more often than not, it's better to have people that know more than you, so that not only can you learn, but it builds a great team because they can share resources that way.
Exactly. And when there are more people to share the same information, it is then easier to find, for example, those cracks that can be problematic. So more balls of eyeballs will recognize dangers easier. It is just changing a bit, but still we have a lot of business leaders who are afraid of opening up and being vulnerable. And it leads to almost cliche of growth mindset. Neuroscientists have been promoting the idea of growth mindset. You need to be open, you need to grow all the time, otherwise you are stagnating or going backwards. And in traditional corporate settings, the power structures are still so strong that it is easy to go behind those power structures. And quite often those leaders are tiny little personalities with big power. And that imbalance will then hurt the company in the long run, because those innovative, creative, and efficient, productive people, they see through this kind of crap, and they leave first. So when you have a leadership problem, one element of that is that those who are the most valuable for the company are then the ones who leave first. And if that's not recognized, it can even destroy the company.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I know that many years ago, I was with a government organisation and they were offering redundancy packages. And unfortunately, the ones with the highest amount of knowledge were the ones who left, because they were the unhappiest. Yeah. And so, it was detrimental to that particular port in Australia, because that expertise was now gone. And, weren't going to replace them with others, or there just wasn't anyone to replace those that had left. Yep. So it was, it's quite, when you've lived through that sort of culture and, been in that environment, I can totally relate to, what you've just said. How then, if people are to be totally transparent, how would they go about, engaging and doing that with their team members?
Well, being open and honest and vulnerable means that you show who you are. You don't need to pretend anything. And quite often, those leaders that I really admire, they are the first one to say that, well, I don't know the answer, or could you tell me more, or could you enlighten, could you elaborate? One of those fantastic leaders, David Marquis, who wrote this book, what was the name of the book? Leadership is Language. In his book, Leadership is Language, he has this story, true story about one ship that was sailing straight to the huge tropical storm, even though all the data, information, everything was pointing out that it will be really dangerous. And the captain and the way he spoke to his people, in terms of language, managed it impossible for people to take right action, and on the against all the common sense, they were sailing right through that storm, and they all drowned. So there were, I don't remember how many dozens of people drowned in that storm, but then they managed to save the black box of that ship. And Marquis was able to have the transcripts of the discussions, and he could show that actually it was the language that the captain was using was blocking all the warning signs. So when we talk with our team members, whether it's upstream or downstream, we need to be careful about the language what we are using, because language can in very subtle way block innovation and cause, a lot of tension between people, even though we don't even see it. And that's why the leaders need to be very self-reflective in the way they talk, the way they use their language, and encourage other people to use language. It is not cancel culture or walking on eggshells or being afraid of everything I say can be used against you, but it is the way of helping other people, not top down, but top up, so that, leaders raise people up and not put them down.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's a great concept, and I think even in our government at the moment, or any of those types of organisations, I think they would be much better off if they led from the bottom up rather than from the top down. I think we'd be a much happier culture and a much happier country.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You won't get into politics though, not today.
Not today. Safer so.
Moving on from, the transparency and the language, because language really is important. I mean, what I say, it may be misunderstood by you or by, some person, because their understanding of what I've said is totally different to what I meant. And I know that this works mainly with written word. It's because the intent is not always received as it should be, and so it sometimes is much better to go and face to face someone, and even then words can be misunderstood, or the tone is misunderstood. So how can leaders better refine their language, I guess, and their tone?
Well, asking more the what and how questions instead of why. Because when you ask, why did you do like that? There's inbuilt patronizing element. It's like blaming game starts from, why did you do that? It's like parenting. You ask your son, why did you do that? It's like, okay, I'm dumb. Yeah, I did it. But if you ask, what do you feel? what did you think when you were doing, what was happening? Gather those facts. What was going on? What did you think? What was your intention? How did you try to do it? Okay, there were some things that didn't go as planned or backfired, but how did those things happen, and what was going on? And then when people start to elaborate, they usually, when they start to elaborate the situation, they come up with new angles, new ways of looking at those things, and self-reflection starts to take place instead of leader having, blaming game going on. And when this self-reflection starts to happen, then the leader can start to ask those open-ended questions. And it's not that I need to lead you somewhere, or I need to, come up with some sort of solution on behalf of you, but people will bring you those ingredients of their own solution. And you build then win-win situation where you as a leader can be confident that that person has now realized what went wrong and maybe why, and that kind of mistake will not take place in the future. So there has been learning, and you as a leader learn about that person. And one big mistake that leaders quite often do is the laziness of learning. They don't want to learn what is behind a job description and role. They don't want to see what is the real human being. And there comes my theater background, because you play a role in your day-to-day work setting. It's a role, you have job description, you need to do some things, but behind that role is an actor, is a human being with their own emotions, feelings, thoughts, and everything. And if the leader is not capable of reading in between those lines and understand what's going on in those personal aspects of that that employee's mind and heart, then the leader will lose the game. But if the leader understands the person, it strengthens the bond and actually releases the oxytocin, which is the hormone, trust hormone, and makes the chemical reaction of trust and safety and happiness to take place in the work settings. So that's how we build little by little this environment of trust. But leaders need to be the initiators of this process. They need to be curious about people. And if a leader is not curious, they will lose the game in the long run.
Yeah, I find interesting about interviews. When you go for an interview, and the manager, whoever's conducting the interviews, looks at the position description and whatever, and it expects people to fit into a little hole, rather than judging the person on personality. They do more on skill. How can we better the interview process when, I think, to me, they should be based on personality more than, the silly questions that they ask you, where are you going to be in 5 years' time? Well, we could all be dead in 5 years' time. How can you make, an assumption about where you're going to be?
Exactly. I always felt really uncomfortable during these interviews, whether I was interviewing somebody or I was interviewee. So it's like, why do you ask these standardized HR bullshit questions? Because you are not even remotely interested in me as a person. And my skills are always more than any job description. There might be something that is useful, but more important is not the skill, but my attitude and approach to work. I can learn new skills, but if my attitude is wrong, or if I'm not committed, if I'm not dedicated, if I'm not, creative, then no skill will save the situation. And those interview questions, I remember once I was in a panel a few years back, and there was this HR business partner who was so full of herself that her questions were leading the witness, Your Honor. It was unbelievable. I was watching it happening when, you know, this business partner got there was the lady who applied the job. She was really clever, and she was just, you know, feeding those answers to that lady. And after the interview, the business partner was, oh, yes, I got so much out of that person. I didn't say, but I was thinking, you didn't get not a single thing out of that person. That person was just manipulating and giving you those answers because you were not observing, you were not interested in that person, but you were trying to, you know, be a, you know, brilliant, you know, hiring
HR manager. Yeah.
It
Yes.
was so ridiculous and funny.
Yes, yeah. I've been a candidate on several panels, you know, exactly like that. And they have no interest in me as a person. They just want to know if I could answer the questions. And, you know, it was like, who could answer the questions the best was the person who got the job. And really that's not the way interviews should be conducted at all.
It's more about passion. You need to ask and get people to talk what they are passionate about. What are their values? What are the things that make them tick?
Yeah.
And then the skills and all those things. Okay, if you have done your master's degree, if you have this and that and one other certificate, fine. But if you don't have the passion for the work, if there's nothing that makes you tick, it's waste of both persons' time.
But education doesn't necessarily make you smart. I mean, you can have all the degrees that you like, but and you could, you know, be all of end all, but it doesn't actually make you smart in the real world. It just makes you clever in the academic world.
Yeah, and then sometimes those clever academics with 3 PhDs, they are total pricks.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they have no personalities, and yeah, we're not going to go there either.
Yeah, but well, on the other hand, there are plenty of good academics, but now that the whole way that academia has been set up is, you know, the Western countries have set up academia to fail. And it's another thing. Sir Ken Robinson was one of the trailblazers of new education and new ways of creative pedagogy. He passed away a couple of years ago, but you know, his legacy is still there, and I think, you know, his warning signs should be listened by all educators, but not only educators. Also, business leaders should go to and watch Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talks and start to think how I'm applying educational, pedagogical principles, andragogic principles into my leadership, because leaders who don't understand pedagogy and learning and those things, they are, in my books, they are not very clever leaders. No. If you don't have these metacognitive skills to learn, you can't be a leader.
No, you have to, yeah, and a leader should be always learning anyway, whether it's out of a textbook or out of a TED Talk or from a staff member, family, the person down the street. You know, you've got to be open to learning all of the time. You can't just say, well, I've got this degree and, you know, I'm smarter than you because I've got this degree and you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Jussi, have you written any books?
I happen to have. I have written 6 books, and 5 of them are in Finnish. So there's a good reason for you to start to learn Finnish language.
Okay.
Because I'm much better writer in Finnish than in English. But then I have also written a book 1.5 years ago in English, digital campfires.
Yes.
So this is a brain dump. I wrote, my experiences during the last 3 decades in digital content creation industry. So learn, lead, leverage digital media means that we need to become digitally literate. We need to be able to understand how media works, how different media elements can be used for communication, for better communication, and conveying our messages better. So it's kind of I had to write it to clean the attic and get more space to write something new.
Well done. So where can they find your book?
It's available in Amazon in Kindle and Apple Books, and also you can have hard copy from on my website. There's a link to the bookshop where you can get the hard copy, and I can send you as a complimentary copy one of these, if you send me your address.
I'll do that after we get off the podcast.
Fantastic. I will send it to you.
Jussi, where can people find you?
People can find me on through my website, www.jussiluukkonen.com, and just calling me, booking an online meeting or face-to-face meeting, whatever is best for people. I have thank heavens, Zoom and COVID, even though it's terrible for other reasons, but people have used to use virtual tools. And during the last 2 years, the world has shrunk. And like I have customers and business partners from Armenia to Finland to London to USA and all over the place. So these fantastic technologies allow us to sit around this digital campfire, and these technologies are like logs we throw into that fire, and the logs are not so important, but keep the fire alive. And then the most important thing is that we are around that digital campfire, telling our stories, listening other people's stories, and come together. And now this technology has finally come to a place where we can have these video calls, and you can have your smartphone. And like my son, he's in Finland. Every morning he calls me FaceTime call, and we talk sometimes 10 minutes. Like today, we had over 1 hour discussion. And it's funny, he's 19 years old, and it has got us much closer to each other than any other tools. So digital campfires are a good thing, but they are good only if we use them to bring people together. So you can get in touch with me through digital campfires. You just, Google me, or you go www.jussiluukkonen.com, and there's a link to my Calendly. You can book anytime meeting with me.
Perfectly perfect. That sounds absolutely awesome. Jussi, you've got any last words of wisdom, a tip or something that you'd like to share with us?
Well, when we started from the idea of building trust, and last piece of thing is that if we look at the research that, for example, Paul J. Jack has done, really robust research, he has shown that if there is a culture of trust, 74% of people feel less stressed, 50% feel and can verify higher productivity, and 106% of companies have and people have reported more energy at work. So if we want to get more energy, high performance, higher productivity, more job satisfaction, we need to create this culture of trust. And there are 3 things that I would like to leave with you and with the audience. If we really want to build this kind of culture of trust, there are 3 things. One is compassion. We need to be more compassionate. Second thing is wisdom. We need to build wisdom. And then the third one is we need to have courage to show our vulnerability and be open and transparent. So compassion, wisdom, and courage are those attributes or features that leadership needs to develop and be aware of and nurture. So that would be my advice.
Wise words indeed. Jussi, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Rose. It's been a privilege, and I'm really honored to be, part of your video blogs. What do you call it? Blogs?
Yes, that's it. Thank you. Have a great time.
You too. Thank you so much. See you.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.